Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join into this space today. This chat is for parents and carers supporting young people through bullying, whether your young person is the one experiencing the bullying, seeing the bullying happening, or maybe they're the ones engaging in the bullying behaviour. It can bring up a lot of emotions, a lot of uncertainty for everyone involved. And it's important to know that you're not alone and there are things that you can do. So I'm Stephanie. I'm one of the Kids Helpline at School facilitators, and I'm joined by the amazing Kim.
Hello, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me. My name's Kimberly Harper. I am the manager of Parentline in Queensland and Northern Territory.
Thanks so much, Kim, for jumping in. We're excited to jump in. So grab a coffee, a tea, get comfortable, and let's unpack this a little bit further. So to start us off, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land who have walked and cared for this land for thousands of years, and their descendants who maintain their spiritual connection and traditions. We thank them for sharing their cultures, spiritualities, and ways of living with the land in this place that we now call our home. We pay our respects to elders, both past, present, and emerging. May we continue to walk gently and respectfully together with each other. So Kim, in my role, I have the privilege of being virtually invited into schools to talk about a variety of topics. Bullying is one of the big topics booked by schools across Australia and is one of the top 5 reasons why young people reach out to Kids Helpline, both in primary school and in high school age students. So during our lessons, we often talk about how everyone has a role to play. So today's chat, I would love to explore with you further about the parents and carers' role when it comes to bullying.
Absolutely.
So in our lessons, we always start our chats by exploring what bullying is and what bullying isn't. So for parents, how can they tell the difference between normal conflict within friendships and compared to actual bullying behaviour?
Yeah. Look, I think you just using the words like normal conflict. Conflict is normal. Conflict is something that occurs between friends. It occurs between it's a really normal space to be. It's usually temporary. And it's usually something that can be resolved. It may need parents to scaffold the resolution sometimes, because that's how kids learn how to communicate their way through conflict. But it is a really normal part of any kind of relationship and any kind of interaction. When we're talking about bullying specifically, we're talking about, I guess, when that kind of escalates. We're also looking at the fact that escalation may be ongoing. There's a lot of the time there may be that kind of power imbalance within the relationship where one child is experiencing those behaviors coming towards them. So it's usually kind of has that repeated nature, and it does cause harm and distress to the participant with the less power within that space as well.
So that's really helpful to distinguish between the two. So let's say it is determined to be bullying.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the reasons children might participate in bullying behaviours?
And I think it's a really important space to talk about as well. Why, when we're talking about the why, it's not to negate the consequences that someone might be experiencing, a young person or a child, or as a parent, your child may be experiencing in that dynamic. But it's a really good thing to look at when we're trying to support kids that may be engaging in bullying as well, and even kids that are experiencing it well. So it usually will signify some type of underlying challenge. So whether or not, and this is obviously kind of very different depending on the ages of kids that we're talking about, but kids are learning, progressively as they develop. They're learning how to manage their emotions. They're learning how to process their emotions. And that's not always a really easy thing to do for certain kids as well. So there might be some really big emotions that they just don't know how to really deal with. We can also see that you know, that social power and that social status that kids are navigating for as well might have a part to play in the dynamics behind bullying, which also leads to the peer pressure kind of component as well, when other kids may get involved and it might be a group of kids that are engaging in behavior. There could be kind of some self-esteem issues that are going on that kids don't know how to deal with. We're also looking at different kind of learned behavior, and you know, the environment in which we learn how to socially interact. You know, we learn that as well from the environment that we're in. So it's really important for us to have that empathy, and I think that's a really important word. Sometimes we're also seeing like that level of empathy is not being fully developed as well, which I think is why it's really important to understand what's the underlying issue, because that's how kids learn empathy as well. It's an you know, we also kind of talk a lot about a response to kind of stress and a response to trauma. But I think the overarching issue is, and the message that we want to kind of get across, is that kids that are engaging in bullying behavior, it is a complex issue. It is the why behind it is a really kind of complex question to answer. And like I said earlier, it doesn't negate what's going on and it doesn't negate the consequences, but it absolutely should feed into how we're supporting kids that are engaging in that behavior.
Very helpful insight there. And so going back to that empathy is so important,
Yeah.
trying to understand that. Okay. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of the parents if a child comes to us. So they come home and they say they are being bullied. So they're the ones being bullied. They can be a very confronting moment for any parent. How can a parent or carer respond in that moment?
Yeah. And look, it's interesting because that's usually when parents, where Parentline will actually speak to parents in the moment is the moment that you're describing, when the child has kind of come to the parent and they've had really understandable emotional reactions as well. Because whenever we hear about our kids potentially being in harm's way or you know, really struggling with something in an emotional space, it's absolutely going to make parents feel a certain way. It's going to make us feel scared and worried and wanting to know that we're doing the right thing. So I think first things first, it's how do we like calm that space. When kids come to us, we want to really create a calm and safe space, and just be aware of our own emotions as well in that space. The first thing that we always say to parents is, how do we support the connection? First things first, how do we get parents just to sit with it? We don't need to instantly jump into a fix-it moment or you know, I'm going to take care of this moment, which is a really understanding thing that happens a lot. And so it's not unusual for parents just to want to fix it, but we don't want to do that straight away. We just want to kind of chill and try and just listen, and we want to try and connect, and we really want our kids to be able to tell their story and how they're feeling about what's going on for them in their own words. And I guess the main thing is to allow a space where they are in a position of power. Like I said earlier, bullying can be a real big power imbalance as well. So the idea that a parent can kind of really empower their child to tell their parent how they want to approach this, what they want to do about it, and that they have this awesome team player that's going to stand behind them and support them in the choices that they want to make in that space.
That's really validating to hear, Kim, because as parents, we're human and we do feel things very deeply, especially when our kids are involved. So it can create a really strong, powerful emotional reaction.
It's super common.
So how does a parent's initial reaction influence the child? What's that look like?
And look at again, and this is about kind of creating a really safe space for parents to reflect on as well. On one hand, we really want to normalize that because it is a normal reaction. So it's not about, oh, I did the wrong thing and I, you know, responded in that way that you know, I shouldn't have done. We want to normalize that it does happen, but we want to be aware of it so we can lessen it as well. I think you said earlier, like we're hearing so much about bullying on Kids Helpline. One thing that kids are telling us on Kids Helpline as well is that they don't want to, 60% of kids are unlikely to tell their parents. And that's because kids are worried about their parents. They're worried about everything that's kind of going on for them, and they don't want to add to that emotional space. But they're also worried about the emotional reaction, and that power will be taken off them as well. So I think the big thing is understanding that our emotional responses will play a part into what our kids tell us, how they tell us information. And so normalizing that, if we do have a big emotional reaction, be kind to yourself. It's okay to go back to your child and say, I really wish I hadn't said that. Like, let's backtrack. When we can kind of think about things calmly, we absolutely have the space that we can be like, okay, forget about what I said. Let's hear from you. Like, what do you want to do? Right.
And that goes so well hand in hand with what we're hearing in lessons from the kids. We often hear that they don't want to reach out, or when they don't want to reach out, or get the parents to involve the school in some way, they say things like they don't want to worry anyone, or they think it might make things worse. So there is sometimes that fear or shame involved. So in those cases, how might a parent approach that sort of conversation?
If they don't want to tell the school, if the child doesn't, and that's kind of at odds. I think, again, it's super common. It's understanding that fix-it moment doesn't have to happen right now, right? And it's understanding that it is going to be kind of a journey and a connection, like it's something that we're supporting our kids with over a period of time. So we do want to follow their lead. We do have that time to like slow it down, to go at our child's pace. To keep talking to them. It's very important. Like, we are the biggest protective factor in our child's well-being. If we're making them feel seen and if we're making them feel heard, then we're already doing a really big, amazing thing to kind of wrap supports around our child. So it kind of allows us to then take those moments of empowerment, take that moment to kind of really lean into the relationship so they are feeling more confident and more supported. If it gets to the point that they want to take it that step further, then there's a real trust there that they know that their parent's going to have their back and really follow their lead. So it's more likely to kind of progress.
So I think you've already answered it in that part here, but I would like you to expand on it a bit more, because you already mentioned words like connection, trust. So when working with the school, how can we, a parent, really create a truly effective partnership between both the child, their parents, and the school?
Yeah, look, it's kind of all the same, right? Like, it's on one hand, we're really acknowledging how emotional this is. So when we feel like we're not feeling seen or heard, or that we have no power in a situation, we're going to have an emotional reaction to it. And that's really understandable. So if we are kind of having not feeling like that with the school, we're gonna kind of react. So I think the best way is, again, how do we center ourselves and keep ourselves really calm? I think the language that we use and that idea of partnership, we've just partnered with our child. How do I really kind of scaffold the conversation so I feel like I'm partnering with this school, the school that my child's going to as well? How do we get an outcome for this? It helps when we think about, that's where that why a child might be bullying might give us a little bit more capacity as well, because we know that there's stuff kind of going on as well. So we want good outcomes for everything. We don't want a child to be, engaging in bullying behavior, and we certainly don't want our child to be on the receiving end of it. So how do we as a team get an outcome for our child, for the kids that are experiencing this as well? So how do we advocate really calmly and in a team mindset?
So that advocation, getting support, and everyone, kids in primary school, high school, parents, carers, everyone deserves that support.
Absolutely.
So when is it time for a parent or carer to seek extra support in these situations, do you think?
And I think that's a really individual thing as well. It's about that well-being, but not just parent kind of supporting their kid. And when they notice that the child is really struggling with things, it's absolutely fine to reach out and to support our kids to get extra support. Having services like Kids Helpline around is a really easy way that we can kind of access support for our kids, but understanding that as parents, if we're feeling like we're not advocating, or if we're feeling like we're not coping with that situation as well as we can, that's why services like Parentline exist, because understanding that it is hard. It is hard to feel that kind of overwhelm when we are worried, about our kids. And so to have someone that helps us kind of walk beside us and talk us through and support that next step and how we can advocate really positively for our children. I think that's so important. But I do think that looks different for everyone. I think the most important message that we want to get out there as well is that there is support out there, both for the kids that are going through it, whether or not they're the ones that are engaging in this behavior, or whether or not they're the ones that are on the receiving end of this behavior, but also parents, because parents are so important to the well-being of their kids. So we really want to wrap that support around them too.
That really is an important message, because we are at the moment encouraging people to spread the word about getting help and support, both spreading the word about Parentline, on my end, spreading the word around Kids Helpline, knowing that they can let their young people know that Kids Helpline is a 24-hour service. Yeah. They can reach out to us about anything big or small. Yeah. We do talk to people from the age of 5 all the way up to 25. And then in my role, we actually support schools. So if a teacher is watching, or someone within a school community, or maybe you want to recommend it to your child's school, we do free mental health and wellbeing sessions all across Australia. So we come into the school virtually, where we can provide some extra support around some different topics. Now, Kim, I know another support for parents is something called circles. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Look, my circle for parents is found on our website, so parentline.com.au. And the concept of my circle for parents is really about creating that village mentality, which unfortunately is, is not as present as it might have been in the past. So it's an early space that parents can get on, and they can connect with other parents and share information and feel supported by people that are experiencing or going through the same thing, whether or not that's bullying, or whether or not that's, just supporting an adolescent in general, or whatever the issue is. But it's a really safe space, because it's also moderated by the Parentline counsellors. So the team of counsellors are in there to help facilitate that conversation and just ensure that it's a safe space for parents to share how they're feeling.
On the other hand, for young people as well, we have something very similar called My Circle. This one's for 13 to 25-year-olds. That is also supported by counsellors that they can join for peer-to-peer support. Well, we've come to the end of time quite quickly, so thank you so much for walking through all that knowledge with us, Kim. Really great insights there.
Thank you so much for having me. Like you said, the biggest thing is just normalizing help seeking. It's okay for parents to need that added support too. Seeing our kids in pain is a really hard thing to go through for us as well.
Yeah, these situations can be very confusing and difficult, but from what you have shared, focusing on staying calm, building that connection, involving the young person where possible, can really open up that discussion to help the young person feel safe, supported, and heard.
And empowered. That's what we want. We want that empowerment for them. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who clicked on the link, who's joined in. You've taken action in your own learning today and to support your young people. So thank you for that, and continue to spread the word. Thank you. Thanks, Kim. We'll see you all next time.